Hey, good morning, Choice Residential. Hope your day's off to a great start. Today, I want to talk a little bit about surveys. I know sometimes agents have a hard time talking about surveys to their clients and helping them understand the importance of having a survey, especially when those surveys in recent years have become much more expensive. Probably on the low end, you're looking at $500. Oftentimes, they're bumping up against $1,000 or maybe more if it's a larger property or more complicated property, or you need additional information on that survey. So I realize it's not an inexpensive thing in a moment in which they're spending lots of money on other things like inspections and appraisals and down payments and due diligence fees. So I understand that it's another more abstract expense that they have, and they may not understand the importance of a survey. So I just want to talk through a couple of things with you to hopefully help you explain why it's important to have a survey done. And this is irrespective of whether it's new construction or not. In fact, I'll share quickly an example one of our agents had when they were selling new construction. They insisted that their client have a survey done despite the fact that the client didn't want it. They would not take no for an answer. Good thing, because the house itself was actually built over the property line. Don't even ask me how that could possibly happen. It did. That buyer was able to back out. They eventually worked it out. The builder was able to buy some property from the other homeowner. Fortunately, they were very large lots, multiple acres. It was able to be worked out, but our buyer was able to walk away and not have to deal with that headache that would have come after closing or when they went to try to sell the home one day. So examples like that demonstrate why it's so important to have surveys. But beyond just that type of encroachment, which was more major in nature, usually there are more minor encroachments like fences that might be over the property line. Those are good things to be aware of, not always catastrophic issues. But you do also just simply want to know where the property lines are for future reference, to make sure your neighbors don't build something over the property line later. That's good information to have. There's also things like easements that can show up. I heard of an example once where there was actually a graveyard beyond the property, and there was an easement that allowed people to access that graveyard. And that was a recorded easement, which would have shown up on a survey had the buyer decided to get it. Instead, there were people coming onto their property. They raised a fuss and later learned that there is actually an easement that allows those people to visit that family graveyard. So there's all kinds of abstract information that could show up on a survey that you're not always aware of and may not be easy to articulate to a client. If you're ever having trouble articulating this, you can also always just refer them to the closing attorney. Closing attorney will have lots of examples of why they should get a survey, beyond just the fact that if they don't get a survey, there will be an exception written into their title insurance policy that says if anything ever comes up that could have been discovered had you had a survey, we will not cover it. So that exception will exist if a buyer does not get a survey. There are also some attorneys who will have a buyer sign some kind of form acknowledging that they are declining their right to have a survey. You'll notice there's language on the professional services disclosure about surveys and why it's important. So that's just another layer of support you can have if you're having a hard time getting a buyer to understand why surveys are important. Another quick note for you is that most surveyors by default are just going to pin the change in direction. So usually that's the four corners of a property, or maybe if it's not just a rectangle or a square with straight lines, they might mark any change in direction with an iron pin that goes in the ground, and they would flag that. But if you want additional stakes to show the property line, you would generally need to ask for that specifically, and there would be additional charges. The other thing is impervious surfaces. So again, impervious surfaces being surfaces that water cannot penetrate. So that includes concrete, the roof. Oftentimes decks are going to be either partially or fully impervious, pools, things like that, including retaining walls and sidewalks, by the way. So any surface area that water cannot penetrate. And you want to know this because there are limits on how much impervious area each lot can have. And so not only do you want to know that, hey, the house I'm buying, that lot has not gone over that impervious limit because there's new retaining walls and patios that were added to the house somewhere along the way. But if your buyer wants to add something themselves in the future, say expand the driveway, add another patio in the back, build retaining walls in the front, or something more significant like building a pool, you need to know, is there any room left in the impervious surface allotment for me to do those things. And so again, a lot of surveyors don't include that naturally in what they provide. You would need to ask for that calculation to be done. So hopefully this sheds a little bit of general information on surveys for you. Again, your closing attorney is often a great resource if you need additional information or examples about why surveys are important, or if you need some backup in talking to your clients. So if you have other information or examples or situations you've come across where surveys either were done and helped or weren't done and ended up being a problem for the client, put them in the comments below. We'd love to read about it and learn from those situations. All right. Thanks everybody for joining. Until next time, take care.